Good morning, great souls. I'd like to read a selection of Yogananda's from his book, Whispers from Eternity. This is number 108, Demand to See God in Everything. O Father, may I behold Thee, above, beneath, behind, around, wherever I turn my gaze. Train the children of my senses never to stray from Thee, who dwellest at the heart of everything. Turn my eyes inward to Thy changeless beauty. Attune my ears to silence, that I may hear Thy subtlest music. Breathe on me the heavenly scent of Thy sacred presence. Orient-wise I will worship Thee, placing the candles of my 5 senses on the altar of my love. Thus I will contact Thee in the first pale shafts of dawn, absorb Thee in the bright light of noon, expand in Thee with the hidden glow of twilight, and merge in Thee in the silver moonlight. Always will I keep alight on my inner altar the mystic taper of my love for Thee. How's the sound quality? Okay? Hear me okay? All right. Kind of experimenting with different systems. So, good morning, all. This reading that you just heard, Rays of the One Light, that talks about Jesus' words to everybody are a good reminder to us, but they have subtle levels to them too. There's a term, ahimsa, and ahimsa is the first thing that a great sage, Patanjali, told us all is the step that we take on the spiritual path to find true happiness. Now, those of you who practice any kind of yoga, you've heard the term Ashtanga Yoga or the Eightfold Path or Patanjali. These are all kind of trendy buzzwords nowadays. But Patanjali was actually very smart, and then he gave us step by step just a description of what every soul does to find the true light that we're all seeking. And the first step of these were things called the yamas. Yamas are simply things that we kind of rein in a little bit in order to be focused. And the first of these yamas is ahimsa, which is non-violence. And Gandhi made this popular, of course, but what non-violence really is a subtle thing for us, and what it means is not wishing harm to any soul. Are we still sounding okay? Okay. I kind of feel like I'm sort of guttural down here, but that's just where the mic is, I guess. So, of course, I think most of us probably wouldn't kill our neighbors. You know, we're sort of beyond that level. And we might not actually injure them intentionally. But when it gets down to it, are we judgmental of people? Critical of them? Are we judgmental of ourselves? Critical of ourselves? Maybe. That's getting a little more closer to home. And the reason that that's an important first step on the spiritual path is that really the entire goal is to get from where we are, which is, I'd say it's safe to say most of the time, under the illusion of separateness. Like those people are separate from me, we kind of have that impression that that's really true. Or, you know, that politics is a great arena for the illusion of separateness. I'm different from, we're different from them. But in fact, we are one of the same light. Now, how come we don't feel that? You know, God created us in this way where we have to kind of play out this life, and it comes with these senses that are always looking outward. And the outward-looking senses sort of have a way of making us think that things are separate. Out there versus in here. You're separate from me. But in fact, whenever we get to that place of calmness or love, expansive feelings of any kind, expansive, generous attitude, we realize there's a connectedness. And we know that that's our true nature, and we want that more and more. That's why we're all seeking love or happiness in one form or another. Now, what we're ultimately seeking is the sense of unity with God, with the divine, with everyone, with God through everyone. And that's a feeling of bliss, bliss eternal, that doesn't need anything outward to validate it. It's just so self-satisfying, feeling that joy of spirit And that's what the great saints say, that is God, Sat Chitananda, ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss. Well, that's our nature. God created this world by just radiating himself and just this infinite variety, but that's where we've come from. So we are all rays of that same light. Now how do we get back so we're feeling that all the time? Well, of course, great practice that helps us do that is meditation. And it's because in meditation we just let all those ripples that Lorna talked about just quiet down, and we feel the unity, we feel the oneness, we feel the depths of the ocean that is the same as everybody else. You know, it's funny, if I think of my hand, if my fingers were sort of at war with each other, you know, thinking, you're different from me. I don't really like what you're doing there. I think I'm going to do something else. Wouldn't really work so well. But if they just kind of realized, oh, wait a minute, we're sort of like we're working this together, aren't we? Yeah, let's sort of like do what we can do to make this happen here. And so that's what we're trying to do more and more. Now, there's several different ways that we can do that. And I'll just give you kind of a real ultimate advanced series of tips by Swami Kriyananda. I'm not going to read them all today, but I'll point out the book. The book is called Sadhu Beware. And I haven't actually looked to see if we have it in our boutique. I hope we do. But it contains a list, and it starts on page 21, of many, many things that Swami says are techniques of ego transcendence. Techniques of ego transcendence. Now, that doesn't maybe sound so glamorous, but the idea is that everything we're doing on the spiritual path is to try to transcend that illusion of separateness and realize our oneness. And so what Jesus was saying essentially was, you need to get beyond the ego. A healthy ego is good. That gets us to a certain point. We have to be confident in ourselves, be confident in what we want, you know, to practice the yamas, the restraints, the things that keep us from going sideways, you know, from getting distracted and kind of going where we want. And then Patanjali further tells us how to really move forward. And I won't go into all that right now. But what happens at a certain point is that our healthy ego realizes, wait a minute, I don't need to really focus on myself that much anymore. It's been good doing that to this point to kind of be clear what I want and where I'm going, to make sure that everything is, you know, organized the way I need to proceed. But after a while, thinking of myself gets a little boring. It gets a little kind of limiting. You know, do you find that when you're just kind of all reactive about, why did he do that to me? Why did she say that about me? Why am I concerned about what people think? You know, like, do I really sound okay with this microphone here? You know? The more we do that, the more we're kind of spinning around and sort of aiming the spotlight inward at ourselves. Whereas what we really want to do, the way we achieve expansiveness of heart, is by turning it outward. And just consideration of others, service, seva. We'll talk after this a little bit about a seva day that we're having at the Ananda community today. And that is a fabulous way to just kind of let go of the preoccupation with yourself and just be able to get into the flow of something larger. And if we're trying to get from this sense of limitedness to this sense of infinity that Jesus had achieved, all the great masters have achieved that, and they all come to us and say, this is where it's at. That bliss that you're seeking, and maybe seeking it, you know, kind of in a limited fashion, outwardly looking for love in all the wrong places, or, you know, thinking that the happiness is by getting everything all figured out, the perfect job, the perfect home, whatever. Everything changes. You know, we know that. The longer we're around, the more we see that. Things just don't stay in one place. They wiggle around a lot. And the only thing that is eternal is that inner light. And I have a joke that I want to tell you, and it fits in a little bit, you know. But so a mom is fixing pancakes for her two kids. Two kids are Kevin, who's 5, and Ryan, who's 3. And so naturally they're arguing over who's going to get the first pancake. I want it, I want it. So the mom thinks, wait a minute, let's try a lesson here in expansiveness, expansive consciousness like Jesus would have. So she says to the boys, look, if Jesus were here, he would say, let my brother have the first pancake. I can wait. And so Kevin turns to his younger brother and says, Ryan, you be Jesus. So that's kind of where we're at most of the time, is it's really easy to kind of think, okay, that's good for them, but I'm not so sure that I'm ready. But anyway, getting back to this sadhu beware, Swami has several techniques in here for how to overcome the sense of ego if you really want to do it. And, we may not be ready to do all these things. He really wrote this book for renunciates, monks and nuns, who are really trying to focus on being as one-pointed as possible. But it applies to us as well. And, for example, if somebody criticizes you, don't defend yourself. Is the ego worth defending? As a friend said to me once, the ego is not worth defending. It's like, but I do it all the time. Well, yeah, but that's just because we have this habit of thinking of ourselves and thinking that we're separate from others and that we need to define that and, well, at a certain point we don't really. Or if you had an idea first, but then somebody else voices it, do you really need to say, yeah, I had that idea too? Why? It was a good idea, and you happen to tune into it, but where do good ideas come from? Are they really ours? Or are we just lucky enough to tune into them and be on that wavelength? The more we can celebrate the source of it all, the light of God that inspires us, all of our creativity, all of our love, all of our good ideas, they come from that higher source. And the more we can quiet down all those thoughts and just listen sensitively, in meditation, in service, in expansive generosity, by seeing God in others. One time I looked at a photograph of a department that I worked at. And when you look at a group photograph that you're in, who do you look at first? I was just really interested how I just zoned in on that one picture that I identified with. Master said, Yogananda said, the ego is simply the soul identified with the body and all of its thoughts and, preferences, personalities, etc., feelings, emotions. That's okay, but just every once in a while, try identifying with something other than the ego. Identify with spirit, with your source, with what's animating this particular expression right now. Next time you look at a group photograph, look at the other people and think of that reality as just as important as the one that you're familiar with. Somebody once said that in this world, except for one minor exception, it all consists of others. So just realize that except for one minor exception, the reality of this universe is infinitely varied and huger than what we're experiencing right now. And that's where all the great spiritual masters are at, by doing exactly the same techniques that we do. Step by step by step. Meditating twice a day, ideally. We teach how to do that here. Loving others as the same light, the same expression that we feel in ourselves, seeing them as the other fingers on the same hand, really tuning into how God is expressing through them, looking at the events and opportunities that life presents to us, and saying, how is God expressing through that? How is God's light expressing in that? And especially those things that kind of yank your chain, like the doctor that says, does it hurt here? It's like, don't do that. But really, the divine doctor is just trying to see, where are you oversensitive? Where do you have that ego reaction? I just, even today driving in, I just enjoyed noticing how I just got reactive to something. So just have fun with that, noticing where, we almost walk around with chips on our shoulder just kind of like seeing who's going to knock them off, because we want to notice what chips we have on our shoulder. I don't want to walk around with all these chips on my shoulder. So let's do that more and more. Let's see others as expression of the infinite, helping us, reminding each other that where we come from, what our true source is, and let's be that for others. The more that we can express that light, that joy, oh, thou King of the infinite, and share that with others, by concentrating in meditation at this point, what we call the spiritual eye, point between the eyebrows, it's really the frontal lobe of the brain, the center of higher consciousness in people. When we do that in meditation, that's kind of our connection with the infinite. And it's fun sometimes when you're dialoguing with other people to realize they have that same spiritual eye, that same connection to the infinite as we do. Duh. And so I wouldn't advise staring at somebody's forehead like that, because it's a little weird, if they're talking to you and you're kind of looking somewhere else. But just realize as you're talking to them, okay, this is soul to soul. Emerson said we descend to meet. We kind of peek out from behind our masks and say, are we remembering who we really are? This is really good in close relationships, to practice this. Because all the relationships we have, whether, close personal ones, business relationships, friends in a sangha. Sangha is a word that means a fellowship of like-minded souls, just like this. This is Ananda Sangha that we're all part of this morning. So we're all here to help each other remind ourselves who we are. So let's be instruments for that. All right, blessings.
Lived in many countries and mixed with many men. I've shared their days of sunshine, gone with them in the rain. The fires at evening said we were brothers. The fires at evening said we were brothers. A soldier I saw weeping beside a dying friend. My officers had said I must hate him till the end. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers.
A man sat on a doorstep to see the children play. The gentle way he smiled there would charm your fears away. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. A stranger he, but love made us brothers.
One day I climbed a mountain with friends of other lands.
The words we used were different, but joy one understands.
Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Though words and customs vary like waves along the sea, one life beneath the surface binds everyone to me. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Then brothers, why endeavor to set ourselves apart? The fences we've been building squeeze tight upon our hearts. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. Come sing the truth that